Hello students, welcome back to FinArtB. Today we are working on Unit 1.12, Romantic Art. Let's right click on the quiz and open that link in a new window. Start your quiz and size it down so that, you can see your quiz, questions, and your scroll bar still. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and click on our first unit. Size that one down as well. Oops. So that we can see our quiz and the lesson at the same time. Very good. Ta-da! Let's read the questions. Question 1. Which statement best describes Goya's approach to painting? This is the 3rd of May, 1808 by Francisco Goya. Goya avoided references to current events or contemporary life in his paintings. Goya used live models as subjects, so he was able to portray figures with lifelike accuracy. Goya used natural lighting to create convincing space and render forms that looked sculptural. Goya painted with loose, frenzied brushstrokes to enhance the urgency and chaos of an image. Question 2. Which of the following is a characteristic of Ujjain Dellacroix's Liberty Leading the People? The painting employs pure colors and contrast between light and dark to emphasize key elements. The painting has subdued color palette with subtle contrast between darks and lights. The painting has orthogonal lines that draw attention to the important elements. The figures are rendered with lifelike accuracy, reflecting Renaissance traditions. Question 3. How does Dellacroix's Liberty Leading the People show the influence of Baroque art? Remember, Baroque's all about action. Elements in the painting are organized along strong horizontal and vertical lines. The painting incorporates the classical ideas of calmness and reason. Dellacroix used highly refined smooth brushwork that shows no visible marks. Dellacroix wanted the painting to provoke an emotional response from viewers. Perfect, so let's get started. All right, Romantic art. Spanish and French painters of the Romantic style rebelled against the rational and orderly qualities of neoclassical art. Francisco Goya and Ujjain Dellacroix painted emotional scenes filled with danger, adventure, and political turmoil. Their artwork represented the disillusionment with reason that permeated early 19th century Spain and France. Goals for the lesson. Identify distinguishing characteristics of specific works of art and architecture from Baroque to Romantic. Identify how works of art and architecture from Baroque to Romantic reflect beliefs of their time and place. Identify ways Romantic artists were inspired by Baroque art. Identify distinguishing characteristics of Romantic art. Identify ways that Romantic artists were inspired by Baroque art. Identify how works of Romantic art reflect the beliefs of their time and place. The rise of Romanticism. The Enlightenment. Remember, that's the era in the 18th century when thinkers valued logic, reason, and scientific method. The Enlightenment inspired the citizens of both France and America to throw the shackles of repressive monarchy. But the French Revolution of 1789 went terribly wrong. The political instability following the overthrow of Louis XVI degenerated into a period of civil warfare and mass executions known as the Reign of Terror. The country finally emerged from the chaos and bloodshed under the leadership of one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. The people's dreams of a democratic French society died, however, when in 1804 Napoleon crowned himself hereditary Emperor of France. He embarked on a series of expansionist wars, conquering parts of Germany, Italy, and the Low Countries, and Spain. Many philosophers, authors, and composers and artists throughout Europe felt betrayed and embittered by this turn of events. It seemed that the very ideals that had inspired revolution in the first place, humanism and a faith in science and reason, were suspect. Disillusionment gave rise to what became known as the Romantic movement, whose proponents turned to the past for solace and inspiration. Romanticist writing, music, painting, and sculpture reflected a longing for a return to a purer, simpler time. Jacques-Louis David painted several portraits of Napoleon. Romantic art. Romanticism flourished at about the same time as neoclassicism. Reacting against rational and orderly neoclassical art, Romantic artists thrived on emotion, imagination, and intuition. Their artworks depicted danger, conflict, heroic struggle, adventure, and faraway, exotic places. The idea of freedom inspired Romantic artists. As they turned away from the rationality and reason of neoclassical art, Romanticists looked to the emotion of Baroque for inspiration. They absorbed the Baroque conventions of creating drama through rich color, strong diagonals, contrast in light and dark, and loose brushwork. Yet they infused their canvases with something new, a shock value that engaged the emotions. They wanted the viewer to experience what they themselves felt about a subject. This painting is called The Raft of Medusa. It's by Theodore Girot, and it captures a real-life tragedy, the ordeal of the survivors of a French shipwreck. Francisco Goya was born in 1746 in the town of Fuendetodos. And that's in Spain. He began his artistic training at age 14 as an apprentice to a local painter. After a brief trip to Italy in 1770, he returned to Spain and found work in the Royal Tapestry Factory making Rococo-inspired preparatory drawings called cartoons for King Charles III. A cartoon is a full-size drawing or painting that serves as a guide for another artwork, such as a tapestry, a stained glass window, or a fresco. During that time, Goya refined his painting and printmaking skills and gained a reputation as an artist of great talent. Charles III commissioned Goya to paint his portrait, and Goya was eventually appointed the court painter to King Charles IV. Over the course of Goya's career, his subject matter changed from light-hearted and hopeful to profoundly troubled and violent. Deeply affected by the political turmoil that engulfed Spain during his lifetime, Goya reflected in his work the intense patriotism that he felt for his country. A versatile and prolific artist, Goya produced hundreds of drawings, paintings, murals, and prints. Intensely patriotic, Goya was deeply affected by the political turmoil that engulfed Spain. The 3rd of May, 1808. Goya painted the 3rd of May, 1808 to draw attention to the brutal killing of Spanish peasants by Napoleon's soldiers during the French occupation of Spain. He crafted a powerful composition by creating two distinct groups of figures. On the left, we see the helpless peasants cowering in fear. The central character, illuminated by the glow of a massive lantern, holds out his hands in terrified yet bold surrender. Bodies lie at his feet. On the right, the executioners stand within inches of their targets, their horizontal rifles aimed in unison. They are an anonymous firing squad, cast in deep shadow. A steep hill confines the horrifying scene, and a hushed village looms in the shadowy background. Some people might take offense at the violence in this painting. Do you think art can be good if it depicts controversial subject matter? Goya painted the 3rd of May in 1808 to publicize the brutal killing of Spanish peasants by Napoleon's soldiers during the French occupation in Spain. He divides the painting into 2 distinct groups. On the left are the helpless peasants cowering in fear. On the right is a nameless, faceless firing squad. The scene is set in the pre-dawn hours and illuminated by the bright glow of a lantern. To focus the viewer's attention on the central figure, Goya contrasts stark light against dark shadows. The bright white shirt and warm ochre paints of the doomed man mirror the colors of the lantern and stand out against the cool grays of the other figures. Goya used lighting and composition to make the viewer feel sympathy for the peasants. He illuminated the face of the terrified victim and set the executioners in shadow with their backs facing the viewer in anonymity. He placed the executioners close to the victims to heighten the shock value and sense of horror. Goya positioned the central figure in white, in a Christ-like pose with his arms outstretched as if he were nailed to a cross. In the palm of the victim's right hand is a mark that resembles one of Christ's stigmata, the nail wounds from the crucifixion. Rather than capturing a split second in history or a single execution, Goya arranges multiple figures in various states of death and dying. Bodies lie on the ground, foreshadowing the bloodshed that is still yet to come. Goya's romantic conventions. In the 3rd of May 1808, Goya captures on canvas a deplorable incident of his time in the same way that newspaper photos have preserved shocking images from more recent wars. He presents a dark, politically charged tableau that defies the rational, orderly principles of neoclassicism. Dramatic lighting pours from the lantern and anchors the off-center composition. Goya's loose, frenzied brushstrokes enhance the urgency and chaos of the scene. Goya recorded a tragedy using paint and canvas. Today's newspaper photographers capture similar events with cameras. Goya's inspirations. Goya detested neoclassical art. He claimed that his true inspirations were nature and the Baroque artists Velázquez and Rembrandt. Goya employed certain conventions of other Baroque artists as well, such as Caravaggio. Think about the characteristics of other Romantic paintings. What similarities do you notice in this painting? And here we have the influence of Diego Velázquez from Las Meninas. What similarities do you see in these paintings? And what about Caravaggio's Calling of St. Matthew? Something that jumps out to me is the way that Caravaggio grouped his characters in much the same way that we see a grouping here and look at Christ's arms outstretched horizontally in the same way that these guns are. But what's interesting is that this is Christ and we have the nail in this poor man's hand. So I see some interesting connections. How about you? In this previous one, the connections that I see are kind of with the lighting. You'll notice that here in the center of the portrait where the subject is where you get the brightest light. And we have a similar thing happening here, whereas in the dark background, that kind of just recedes from our eye, from our view, and our attention is immediately brought to this area. So a little bit of contrast here with the darkness in the background, and the same thing is happening here, the dark values there. creating contrast against the highlights. And I would even say that that pyramidal composition is also subtly in effect here. Look at the tip of that building and how it creates a pyramid here, and that creates a really solid foundation down here, so it feels very grounded. Ujjain Dellacroix. Art historians consider Ujjain Dellacroix to be the greatest French Romantic artist of his time. Born in 1798 in a suburb of Paris, Dellacroix spent his early years studying Baroque artist Rubens and the masters of the Renaissance. As his talents matured, Dellacroix developed an artistic style that fused traditional elements of classicism with the flair of Romanticism. Historical accounts of his life describe a wild and rebellious talent grounded in the artist's personal beliefs and convictions. Dellacroix churned out more than 800 paintings during his prolific career. He painted scenes of human conflict and struggles for freedom, powerful forces of nature, scenes from Morocco and other exotic lands, and scenes from literature. A magnificent colorist, Dellacroix produced works that captured the viewer's attention. To Dellacroix, animals personified the passion of Romanticism. He infused frightened horse with romantic characteristics. What are those characteristics of Romanticism? An emotional response? Are you feeling that? Dellacroix's Liberty Leading the People. Liberty Leading the People focuses on an event in French history. After Napoleon was defeated in 1815, France became a more conservative nation under the leadership of King Charles X. Charles X restricted the rights of the people and ended many reforms that benefited the common people. By July 1830, French citizens were so deeply discontented that they organized a revolt. During a 3-day period, they overthrew Charles X and installed a more moderate king. In Liberty Leading the People, Dellacroix memorialized the uprising by depicting a jumbled cast of characters surging through the streets of Paris. When he finished the painting, however, it was not well received. Critics rejected the artist's style and felt it was not realistic enough. What do you think about the style of this artwork? Art as a political statement. Like his Romantic contemporaries, Dellacroix did not merely record a historical event as it happened. He used imagination and deep feelings to create a narrative painting that some critics would say constitutes pure political propaganda. The allegorical female figure of Liberty anchors the center of the painting, waving the revolutionary flag of France in one hand and carrying a musket in the other. United by the common goal of liberation, the other subjects in Dellacroix's painting reflect the levels of society. Dellacroix's Liberty Leading the People focuses on an uprising in 1830, during which the French people overthrew the king. United by a common goal, the subjects in the painting reflect all levels of society. Liberty has a strong Greek profile. Her flowing dress is reminiscent of winged victory of Samothrace, a Greek sculpture from the Hellenistic period. She wears a Phrygian cap, a symbol of freedom during the French Revolution. I didn't even notice that cap was on there. Many historians interpret the top hat wearing figure as a symbol of the upper class. Some also suggest that he has the features of Dellacroix himself. A crouched boy ready to fight clutches a sword and a stone. At the feet of the revolutionaries are the bodies of fighters from both sides of the conflict. An injured man on his hands and knees wears the smock and sash of a Parisian day laborer. A young boy holding pistols in bold defiance wears a black velvet beret, a traditional student cap that became a symbol for rebellion. The towers of the Cathedral of Notre Dame are barely visible in the distance through the billowing smoke. Liberty Leading the People depicts citizens from all levels of society who are united by the common dream of freedom. Dellacroix's strong composition. Dellacroix was a meticulous planner and an accomplished draftsman. Throughout his career, he made hundreds and hundreds of sketches. He relied on this vast repository of images to create Liberty Leading the People. Dellacroix organized the individual elements of the painting by using pyramidal configuration, a way to organize an artwork using the geometric shape of the triangle. The main objects within the artwork fit within a triangle, giving the artwork a sense of harmony and stability. The strong diagonals provide structure to the frenzied brushwork and the chaotic scene, yet they also add to its sense of drama and energy. The bodies strewn on the ground anchor the composition and serve as a pedestal for liberty and her victorious patriots. Dellacroix created a sense of depth by making the nearest figures very large and pressing against the front of the picture, while making the distant figures dramatically smaller. He also used atmospheric perspective, which is a technique in art for creating the illusion of depth in a painting by making distant objects less detailed, paler, and bluer than nearby objects. It's also called aerial perspective. Dellacroix organized the painting with the pyramid configuration. Strong diagonals add to the drama. Dellacroix's color and contrast. Dellacroix was a brilliant colorist. He placed punches of pure pigment in key areas of the painting, using color to emphasize important details and create a sense of unity. Notice, for example, the bold diagonal slashes of white that are repeated in the pouch straps of two of the figures. Dellacroix also created sharp contrasts of dark and light and bold colors to tell the dramatic tale. Color and contrast. In Liberty Leading the People, Dellacroix places punches of pure pigment into key areas of the painting to emphasize important details and also create a sense of unity. Liberty's arm is cast in shadow as it projects triumphantly out of the bright background. The boy on the right is so darkly shaded against the soft pale smoke that he appears almost in silhouette. Dellacroix draws attention to the dead figure by contrasting his stark white gown with the deep, rich tones behind him. Pure colors emphasize important details and create a sense of unity. Sharp contrasts of light and dark add drama.
Artists of the Romantic
period thrived on emotion, imagination, and intuition, and they were inspired by the idea of freedom. Romantic paintings are often emotional scenes filled with danger, conflict, and heroic struggle. Many art historians consider Ujjain Dellacroix the greatest French Romantic artist of his time. In the painting you see here, Liberty Leading the People, Dellacroix memorialized the French rebellion against King Charles X by depicting a jumbled cast of French citizens surging through the streets of Paris. Anchoring the center of the painting is the allegorical figure of Liberty, waving the revolutionary flag of France and carrying a musket. Liberty has a strong Greek profile, and her flowing dress is reminiscent of clothing in Greek sculptures such as Winged Victory of Samothrace. Liberty wears a Phrygian cap, which was worn by freed slaves of ancient Greece and Rome and became a symbol of freedom during the French Revolution. United by the common goal of liberation, the subjects in the painting reflect all levels of French society. A defiant boy brandishing pistols wears a black velvet beret, a traditional student cap that became a symbol for rebellion. The boy is so darkly shaded against the pale smoke that he appears almost in silhouette. Behind him, in the distance, the towers of the Cathedral of Notre Dame are barely visible through the billowing smoke. An injured man wears the smock and sash of a Parisian day laborer. A crouched boy, ready to fight, clutches a sword and a stone. At the feet of the revolutionaries lie the bodies of fighters from both sides of the conflict. Many historians interpret the top hat-wearing figure as a symbol of the upper class. Some suggest that he has the features of Dellacroix himself. Dellacroix was a brilliant colorist. He used punches of pure pigment in key areas to emphasize important details and create unity. He also created strong contrasts of dark and light to add to the emotional impact. Dellacroix used several artistic conventions to organize the painting. Strong diagonals add drama and energy, and the pyramid configuration provides structure to the frenzied brushwork and the chaotic scene. The bodies strewn on the ground anchor the composition and serve as a pedestal for liberty and her various patriots. As you can see in Liberty Leading the People, Dellacroix was not interested in merely recording factual events. He captured the viewer's attention by infusing his paintings with imagination and emotion.
Excellent. So let's see if we can answer these questions. Number 1, which statement best describes Goya's approach to painting? Remember the 3rd of May, 1808? Was it that Goya avoided references to current events or contemporary life in his paintings? Absolutely not. This is a portrait that captures a current event when they didn't have photography. So for me, my gut instinct is that's going to be the answer. Let's use the system of elimination to get rid of the others. Goya used live models so that he was able to portray figures with lifelike accuracy. You know, these figures aren't really lifelike and accurate, are they? Remember those frenzied brushstrokes that help to create that emotion? Goya used natural lighting to create convincing space. No, this isn't natural lighting. Remember, this is lit by a lantern. Goya painted with loose, frenzied brushstrokes to enhance the urgency and chaos of an image. Ooh. Oh, sorry. That would have been the opposite. That would have been not true. Whoops. In my brain, I was thinking that he doesn't avoid references to current events. He actually embraced it. So sorry, I was thinking backwards. And that's the problem with when they use the negative and you're thinking in the positive with tests. So be careful and always do go through and use that system of elimination, because look what happened. I realized that my logic was thinking backwards and it allowed me to make sure that I chose the right answer. Question 2. Which of the following is a characteristic of Ujjain Dellacroix's Liberty Leading the People? This one should be super easy. The painting employs pure colors and contrast between light and dark to emphasize key elements. That's true. The painting has a subdued color palette with subtle contrast. No. The painting has orthogonal lines. We didn't talk about that. The figures are rendered with lifelike accuracy. No, remember his painting was rejected because it wasn't realistic enough. So that was the correct answer. Good job. Question 3. How does Dellacroix's Liberty Leading the People show the influence of Baroque art? Let's see. Elements in the painting are organized along strong horizontal and vertical lines. No, remember the types of lines used in this are diagonal because they create that feeling of action, intensity. The painting incorporates the classical ideas of calmness and reason. Nope, this is very emotional. Dellacroix used highly refined, smooth brushwork that shows no visible marks. No, he was actually criticized because his brushwork was so frenzied. And Dellacroix wanted the painting to provoke an emotional response from viewers. Yes, that was the purpose of his work. Good job.